Contact us to avail the combo offer of General Studies and Public Administration optional with 20% discount.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yes, so today we are going to have the Hindu analysis of 8th September 2021. Let us see which are the important articles from today's The Hindu newspaper. Yes, these are the important developments. Let us take overview of all these articles, then we will discuss them one by one in detail. First of all, men's related developments. On page number 6, editorial page, two important articles. First one relates to GS3 paper economy, the economic reforms looking back to look ahead. So the article is analyzing the previous economic reforms in last 3 decades, basically after 1991 economic reforms. The focus of these reforms and the outcome of these reforms, lessons to be learned from that, and what changes are required in future. So future economic reforms from here onwards, in which areas these reforms are required, that part is also discussed, and the way forward, that how these reforms should be undertaken. So this is very important. Comprehensively this can be used in essay paper also whenever we talk about economic reforms. Okay, so GS3 paper economy part. Then regulating app store operators. There is one article, editorial, on page number 6. It talks about regulating app store operators like Google, or we can say Apple. All these app stores, actually there was recently one new law that was passed in South Korea. Okay, it was about regulating the app stores operator, especially they were charging, or we can say deliberately asking the app developers to have the in-app purchase from the app store only, and they were charging huge fees on those app developers. Okay, so this is how it is monopolizing the market, taking advantage of market dominance by these large tech companies. Okay, so the article is discussing that from GS2 paper governance aspect. Other countries, which are these other countries wherein similar kind of legislature is being brought up, what is the situation in India, all these are discussed here. Then next one, Supreme Court agrees to adjourn hearing of pleas for Pegasus case probe. So yesterday there was hearing in Supreme Court regarding the Pegasus and the independent inquiry into those allegations, and now this is postponed as the central government is seeking some time here. You need to have follow up on how Supreme Court is going to look into this issue, Pegasus issue. Okay, so that's why we are having this follow up on Supreme Court hearing now onwards, right? So this is important for GS2 paper polity and governance part. Now Prime Minister launched 5 initiatives under New Education Policy 2020. Okay, so which are these 5 initiatives? As a part of, let's say, 10-day Shikshan Parv celebration, PM was addressing the nation and he launched these 5 initiatives under this NEP 2020. So government schemes as well as the initiatives for human resource development, so education sector, so either you can use them in essay paper or this can be asked in prelims examination. Yes. Then Mullah Akhund to head interim Taliban government. So as a follow up to the government formation by Taliban in Afghanistan, so we are just having follow up this information, you need to be aware about this. Fine. And finally practice prelims MCQs on daily current affairs. Okay. So let us go into details. First article, the economic reforms looking back to look ahead. Okay, so this article is not having any specific context. Try to understand. This is written by IAS officer and it is very much relevant to our examination. It is analyzing the last 3 decades economic reforms that were undertaken and the outcome of those reforms, and in which areas the economic reforms were not undertaken, and in future how government can focus on these areas. Okay, so this is directly important to our examination. So yes, in first part it is talking about 1991 economic reforms and gains from it. Now we know that a new economic policy or new economic reforms of 1991, or it is also called as LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, globalization reforms, right. So under these reforms the three important aspects. First is reducing the tariffs so as to have trade liberalization. Second is de-licensing so as to have more and more private sector expansion in the economy, right. And we can say that the role of the government is changed here, and the government earlier was actually focusing on production, or itself was acting as providing of goods and services. This was changed to regulator. Okay, so in this manner we should understand the LPG reforms. Now after these reforms, what are the gains? Surely these reforms have been successful, which is visible from the huge foreign exchange reserves that we have today. At the same time, there is increase in the share of our exports in terms of global exports. At the same time, there is GDP growth consistent between 6% to 8% in last 3 decades. Okay, so on an average we are saying that. So this shows that the gains are there from these reforms. However, we have to understand that whatever the reforms that were undertaken in last 3 decades, they were only focusing on technical aspects of economy and not the process or system or people. Use these words in your answer directly. Okay, they were focused on technical aspect like taxation reforms or licensing and all these aspects, right. So technical aspects were involved in those reforms rather than reforming the system, reforming the process, reforming, we can say, or strengthening the people, that is human resource, right. So the lacuna or the areas in which the reforms were not undertaken and that needs to be undertaken are these areas, broader areas. I will quickly have a review of all this. First of all, human capital. Human capital or human resource capital, we can say, HRC, human resource capital, a very important aspect of any economy. The productivity of the human resource contributes significantly to the economic growth and development of any nation. Okay, so human capital, to some extent the focus has not been there by the government in terms of economic reforms. We will discuss that in detail. Second aspect, technology readiness. So we are lacking the technology readiness because the expenditure, public expenditure on research and development is very minimal at present, around 0.8% to 0.9% of GDP of India. As compared to other advanced nations, like suppose if you are talking about South Korea, it is 4.5%, or if you are talking about China, it is 2.1%. So that comparatively India's public expenditure in research and development is very less, and because of that the technology readiness, especially those in manufacturing sector, they are lacking the innovation aspect here. Okay, and this is contributing to overall low productivity in economy. Then we can talk about the third aspect, labor productivity. First two factors are contributing to low labor productivity in Indian economy. Human capital or human resource capital is very poor, and because of that labor productivity is low. At the same time, the technology readiness or the innovation is not happening, and because of that also labor productivity is less. Then we can talk about the fourth factor, process innovation. The process innovation, it is talking about the efficiency of infrastructure use, or in general we can say infrastructure use efficiency. So at present, whatever the infrastructure we are doing, we have established, we are not using it efficiently. So whatever the processes are there for using that infrastructure, they are not efficient. So we require process innovation also. Okay, so in this manner they are talking about, and then we can talk about the institutional capacity. Institutional capacity in terms of especially government offices or organizations. So there is some kind of, let's say, delay, red tapeism or inefficiency in processing the applications, and because of that it is deterring the private sector in establishing enterprises or expanding their capacities also. Okay, so basically institutional capacity, it is also a problem here. And we can talk about the disposable income also. Yes, we can understand that if we are having the poor human resource capital, and we can say that the low skill ability of the people or the workers, then because of that the per capita income will be very less, and therefore overall family incomes will be also less here. Okay, so these are the problems here, we can say. And when we have such low disposable income with the people, then people are not able to buy the consumable goods, and because of that also it is not raising the demand in the economy and therefore not fueling the economic growth. In this manner we should understand these areas where the economic reforms have not undertaken. Some data facts are mentioned, for example, human resource capital, HRC. So India's ranking in Global Human Resource Report 2017. So India's ranking was 102nd. Why India is having poor human resource capital? Because of three factors. Basically, human resource is calculated from three aspects: education, health, and skill levels. Remember this. Okay, so at present the quality of education is poor, low skill levels are there, and we can say lack of access to the basic health care. Excuse me. Yes, all these are resulting into low human resource capital in India. Okay, so in this manner we should understand now how it can be improved. How it can be improved. Yes, so reforms are required in these areas. We can say that the new areas of reforms and what reforms needed. So in terms of human resource capital, just now we talked about there is need of increase in public expenditure in social sector. In social sector and skill development. Social sector includes, we can say, health and education. Health and education sector. Okay, so there is need of increase in public expenditure in the social sector, and then there can be improvement in human resource capital. Then we can say that the technology readiness, second aspect. In terms of technology readiness, there is need of increase in public expenditure in, we can say, research and development. At present it is 0.8 to 0.9% of GDP. It should increase to 2% of GDP in coming future. It should increase to at least 2% of GDP. Then we can talk about the labor productivity. Surely when there will be increase in human resource capital, there will be increase in labor productivity. There will be increasing labor productivity, and the focus here should be largely on skill development. Largely on skill development. Okay, so here in future the skill development programs, especially when we are talking about the new kind of technologies that we are witnessing. So skill upgradation to the new technologies is very much required. There we can talk about the process innovation. Now we are going to witness Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0. Which technology is included in this Industry 4.0? We can say that Internet of Things is there, artificial intelligence is there, machine learning, robotics, AI, right? So all these are part of industry 4.0, and in future we will require the process innovation so as to accommodate with these new technologies. Okay, the redundant or absolute processes that are there already in we can say in use, they will not be much productive in future for our economy. Then we can talk about institutional economy. So reforms are required to increase efficiency. So we can say administrative reforms. Talk about administrative reforms. More transparency is required and efficiency is required in the administration so as to process or improve the ease of doing business. In recent times, many such reforms have been undertaken. It has resulted into improvement in the ease of doing business ranking under World Bank. Okay, so India's ranking has improved. In future also, that also further needs to improve. And disposable income, surely all these, let's say, increase in labor productivity, increase in human resource capital ultimately will result into increase in disposable income. But at the same time, there is need of social safety net. Social safety net to all the labor or workers. Okay, so in this manner we should discuss the reforms area. Any question?
Sir, I have a general doubt, sir, on exam. Sir, every article is going to be written as India is going to be very low ranking in every stage. Then how we can able to compare, sir? Actually, the comparison will be based on equal provisions we provide any two countries. That is the competition. But compared to USA and UK, they have the less than 22 people. But in India, 130 crores. Within 8 months, we covered more than 70 crores of a distribution of doses. In terms of technology, as well as the human resource, as well as the social expenditure of the from central government. In terms of technology, as well as the labor productivity also has been fully cooperated and developed. These all income and the expenses of technology as well as the human power has been involved in this criteria in development of vaccine. Then how we can able to low category compared to other countries?
Yes, the comparison should not be looked at a negative point of view. The comparison should be always, let's say, looked at the positive aspect. Whenever we are lacking, in certain areas we are lacking, and suppose there is scope of improvement, then we can work on it. For example, this human resource. Okay, so human resource capital, we are certainly lacking on that. Okay, the quality of education and the healthcare access, at the same time the skill levels among the labor is very poor, and because of that all economy is suffering. Try to understand, you are talking about 130 crore, and suppose that 130 crore is very healthy, enough educated and appropriately skilled labor. Suppose in general I am talking here, the huge demographic dividend that we have, India will be superpower within short period of time. Try to understand this. So focus should be on human resource capital formation and innovation promotion. Okay, in future the economy will be driven by innovation and technology. We all know about this, right? So focus here onwards, up till now the focus was creating heavy industries and let's say the providing the employment or providing access to education, access to healthcare, but now focus should be on quality. Focus should be on skill development, upgradation of the skill. Up till now whatever the skill was provided, that needs to be upgraded from time to time, right? So reskilling, upskilling, all these aspects are very important now for any economy.
Sir, from local development and local innovation we create this everything now. So local innovation and local updation now. This will cover these all factors now, sir.
Yes. Every factor. So when we talk about local, we talk about sustainable aspect. Okay. So, when we talk about local, we talk about specific industry, or we can say that the nature of industry that is there in that area. So, skilling will be accordingly, skilling will be done in that same manner. Okay. Suppose there are agro based industries, the skill should be provided in that manner only. If suppose they are manufacturing industries, the skilling should be given accordingly. If they are suppose service industries, the skilling should be provided accordingly, right. So, in this manner we all know that whatever the different sectors of economy are there, the skills should be accordingly given. Okay. Yes, fine. Now, moving on to next article, making them pay. There is one editorial, it is talking about, let us say, context of South Korea's new law to regulate app store operators. So, I will give you background about this issue. The new law brought by South Korea, basically it is regulating app store operators like Google, Apple companies. We all know that these are the app stores operators. We download applications from these app stores, and there are, let us say, provisions whenever we want to purchase some kind of, let us say, services from any app that is downloaded from this app store. Then there are in-app purchases provision, in-app purchases. So, basically when we have this in-app purchases, that means this service that is provided by the app providers, that is these Google and Apple or their app store operators, they are charging fees, very high level of fees to the app developers. Okay, and there is some kind of monopoly, of these app stores. Only Google store and Apple store is very famous. More than 99% apps are downloaded from these only, right. So, we are all aware about that, and they are actually using this, let us say, advantageous situation that they have in the market to take the advantages. Okay, so especially when we are talking about the monopoly that they are having here in terms of app store, so there is some kind of market manipulation, and we can say anti-competitive practices. Use these words in your answers. Okay. Anti-competitive practices and market manipulation by these large tech companies, and because of promoting the fair nature of competition in the economy, now the regulation is going to be done for these app store operators in South Korea. Okay, so in this manner we should understand the importance of law. So, to promote the fair competition in the let us say that particular business, and to protect the app developers from the exploitation. What will happen, suppose the app developers are actually being charged by these app store operators huge fees, then the app developers will that pass on to the consumers only. Okay, so consumers are going to face the high charges for availing that services, and that is not good thing, right. At the same time, some of the app developers are newcomers, okay, and some of the apps are, we can say, already established in the market. So, they have different market share or consumer base, and to promote the fairness or fair competition among all these apps providing same kind of services, there is requirement of regulation of these app store operators. This is the importance of this law. Now, in which other countries such kind of, let us say, similar legislation is being explored? For example, in Australia. Recently in Australia, we have seen that there was, let us say, new law brought in to pay some kind of remuneration towards media houses by online, we can say, social media platforms, right. So, for publishing the news on social media platforms, they were supposed to pay media houses. This new law was brought in, and now Australian government is trying to bring in new law to regulate the private sector payment services also, or payment operators also. At the same time, in US also, the new bill is brought by few members of the legislative houses, and they are also talking about the anti-competitive practices by the App Store and regulating these such App Store operators. In India, okay, so at present in India, there is no law to regulate specifically App Store operators. At present there is no law. However, we can say that recently the Google company is facing, Google or Apple company is facing such charges by one of the NGO, Rajasthan based NGO, and the Competitive Commission of India, CCI, which is responsible for ensuring fair competition among the private players in economy. This is the regulatory body. Okay. So, this regulatory body ensures, and suppose the regulatory body talks about the fair competition and abuse of power or its market positions by App Store operators, then in future we can expect such law in India also. In future we can expect such law in India also, or suppose some regulations or rules under IT Act, the same kind of things will come up. So, we can expect in future a similar legislation in India also. However, what is the main challenge involved here? The challenge is to protect the small sellers, online sellers and developers without undermining the ecosystem for technological innovation. Okay. So, we know that regulation to some extent affects innovation also. Okay. So, it actually inhibits the innovation. Many sectors which are stringently regulated, so it affects the innovation aspect. So, we need to balance here both interests. The first interest is of smaller sellers and developers on the digital commerce websites or those platforms, right? And on the other hand, we have to also promote the technological innovations. So, there is need to balance this both aspects while regulating these app stores in future. Fine? Okay. Any question?
Sir, by putting new laws, it will take some time and it will come and debate with private sector and government sector now, sir.
It
So,
will.
to avoiding of this problem, present government will have not any issue regarding this act. Is there any chance to take over the PSUs to whatever the government or basic needs to the Indian people apps? They need to have a chance to develop the PSU sector now. Like NCT is there, National Informatics Center.
That is fine.
To take the basic apps, whatever the basic needs and basic information apps.
That are being developed, but that is only limited to governance aspect. Try to understand, government will not enter into such kind of things in future which are not going to be much efficient or not going to provide revenue here. Okay, so in terms of governance, NIC is developing all these apps like Arogya Setu is there, Umang app is there, right? So basically they are provided by the government, the government services or public services are provided through these apps. Okay, so they have niche areas for the government services, but these are other developers which are providing other services, so we can say commercial services. Okay, so there is need of fair competition because there will be large players as well as small players or sellers, we will say, in that competition. For example, suppose there is Flipkart, there is Amazon, They are having apps, right? At the same time, there will be small sellers selling same kind of products. Okay, so there is requirement of fair competition among these sellers or app developers also. Fine? Yes. Now, moving on to next, Supreme Court agrees to adjourn hearing of Pegasus or pleas for Pegasus case probe. Right. So, basically here we need to have here onwards follow up on Supreme Court hearing on Pegasus issue. We earlier discussed what was Pegasus, the spyware that is being, let's say, sold by one of the company based in Israel. Okay, so there are some allegations that the Indian government and its organizations or institutes, they are using this against surveillance or spying against some of the top officials, as well as we can say that activists and journalists. So, some of the pleas in Supreme Court, they are talking about the impartial inquiry against such kind of allegations, right. So, Supreme Court yesterday took up those pleas for the hearing, but the government, central government has asked for some more time. We will have follow up on this in future whenever the Supreme Court is going to hear this case. Yes. PM urges private sector to help improve quality in government schools. Now, this is important. Why? Because Prime Minister was addressing the inauguration of 10-day Shikshak Parv. Okay, so we are actually celebrating this Shikshak Parv from the we can say that Teachers Day. So, theme of Shikshak Parv 2021 is quality and sustainable schools, learning from schools in India. This is the theme. You can be asked this in the prelims examination. Remember this. Okay, so quality and sustainable schools. You can see here now the government is talking about quality. Here onwards the focus is going to be on quality, right. So, reforms area we are just talking about. Right, and learning from schools in India. Along with this, the Prime Minister also rolled out 5 initiatives as a part of NEP 2020. Okay, so National Education Policy 2020. Which are these 5 initiatives? Remember this can be asked in prelims examination. Yes, Indian Sign Language Dictionary, which contains around 10,000 words, especially for hearing impaired students or children. They are having this audio and text embedded sign language videos. Okay, so India's Sign Language Dictionary for hearing impaired student. Then there are talking books being developed for visually challenged students. Talking books for visually challenged students. Then teacher training program for early childhood education. This is called as Nishtha Teachers Training Program for Nipun Bharat. Nipun is talking about the childhood education, early childhood education. Nipun talks about, we can say that, the assessment aspects also, right. So, this is being developed under NEP. Nishtha, remember Nishtha is for teachers training program. Then Standard Setting Authority for CBSE. This is called as School Quality Assurance Assessment Framework for CBSE. What is that? School Quality Assurance and Assessment Framework for CBSE. Then last one is Vidyanjali 2.0 portal is launched here to facilitate private donors, corporate sector social responsibility, CSR contributions and volunteering activities. Okay, so we will go into details of this Vidyanjali 2.0. What is this particular scheme? This can be asked in prelims examination. Vidyanjali. So, if we are literally talking about the wordings of Vidyanjali, we can divide it into Sanskrit words. Vidya means correct language, knowledge or clarity, and Anjali means an offering with both hands in Sanskrit language. That is why the word used. Vidyanjali 2.0 is an initiative taken by Ministry of Education with an aim to strengthen the schools through community and private sector involvement in government and government run schools across the country. It is not for private schools, it is for government and government aided schools, remember this. And it tries to connect the volunteers or Indian diaspora, private professionals, young professionals, retired government teachers or the professionals, or we can say government officials also, to contribute towards either directly participating in school service or activity or contribution in assets or material or equipments. Okay. So, volunteering under two heads. First, either directly providing some services or activities, participating in activities like teaching activities there. Okay. Or second head is providing materialistic support, monetary support for buying some equipments or improvement in certain infrastructure. Okay. So, you can visit to Vidyanjali website, okay, under this Ministry of Education. There in these, under these two heads also there are different let us say heads wherein one can contribute towards improvement of government schools or government aided schools. So, participation of private sector and community, fine. Yes. So, finally follow up to government formation in Afghanistan. Yes, Mullah Akhund to head the interim Taliban government. This is interim government and not the final government, and the Prime Minister will be Mullah Muhammad Hassan Akhund. Okay, so he served as Deputy Foreign Minister under the earlier Taliban regime and is on UN blacklist, and he is now Prime Minister of Afghanistan. Though we can understand interim Prime Minister or for the interim government, and let us say position of Interior Minister was given to Sirajuddin Haqqani from Haqqani Network, which is having, we can say that, the terror related past attacks, responsible for terror related past attacks. Okay, so this is how in future the situation is going to be there. How we are going to negotiate with these leaders, that we are going to witness in near future. Okay? Yes. So, what could be answer to this question? Very simple, straightforward question can be asked.
Sir, answer is Vidyanjali 2.0.
Yes, Vidyanjali 2.0. So, why we added such kind of question? Because I wanted to make sure that you know about remaining three also. Okay, so what I want you to do is visit Ministry of Education website, Department of School Education, and there whatever the initiatives are being undertaken in last 1 or 2 years for the school education. So, you should be aware about that. For example, Diksha platform, this is for e-resource for teachers as well as students. E-resources are directly given here. Then Sarthak, this is unique for implementation of NEP, implementation policy or strategy for NEP 2020. Its full form is Student and Teachers Holistic Assessment and Quality, something like that, assessment and quality improvement in education. Okay, so you can refer to website and you read the full forms also. Now, Pragyata guidelines, these were in news last year, these Pragyata guidelines for e-learning. When we shifted to e-learning platforms after the lockdown because of pandemic, Pragyata guidelines were released, if you remember, last year. So, such kind of question can be asked in prelims examination. Okay, match the following type. Initiatives on one side and on other side, what are they for or what they aim for. Fine? Okay. Yes. So, these were important articles from today's The Hindu newspaper. Any question? Okay, then let us stop. We will meet tomorrow at the same time. Thank you.
Contact us to avail the combo offer of General Studies and Public Administration optional with 20% discount.